Personal growth is hard, not because we don't want it, not because we aren't capable, but because growth requires leaving the things that once kept us safe. So many times we think we want something, but then we find every excuse possible not to move toward it. We tell ourselves, we'll do it later, when things settle down, when we feel more prepared, when the timing is better. But personal growth doesn't wait for certainty. It asks us to move away from what's familiar and step into a future we can't predict, one where the outcomes aren't guaranteed. And even when the place we're no longer in fits us, when it's limiting or painful, we stay anyway. Because fear convinces us that staying is safer than risking change. Welcome back. Today we're talking about fear, how it has kept me from seeking real solutions, how it learned to disguise itself as protection, and how naming ADHD-related demoralization sparked something inside me that's helping me push past the obstacles fear keeps placing in my path. Fear doesn't usually announce itself as fear. It shows up as logic, as responsibility, as restraint. It tells you this isn't the right time, that you're not ready yet, that waiting is the smarter choice. But what it's really doing is keeping you tethered to a version of life you've already outgrown. I didn't realize how much fear was shaping my decisions until I began to understand ADHD-related demoralization. Naming that experience cracked something open. It made it harder to ignore how often fear had stood between me and real solutions. I love audiobooks, not just because they entertain me or teach me something new, but because they give me a break from my own voice. Traditional reading has always been difficult for me. Part of it is impatience. I struggle with filler words and unnecessary dialogue that feels like it exists just to add bulk to a book. More often than not, I'm already several steps ahead, guessing what the next 100 pages will entail, and wishing I could skip ahead to the actual point. I've often thought the creator of Cliff's Notes might have had ADHD. Another reason is distraction. If other people are around, I'll read the same page 5 times without absorbing anything before eventually giving up. Audiobooks solve most of that. They have a fast forward button. I can move around while listening. I can do other things. But most importantly, I'm not reading to myself. Because when I read to myself, I'm not just reading, I'm judging, I'm critiquing, I'm giving myself feedback in real time. It's exhausting. As I've been moving through this process, truth, grief, clarity, I've been taking a one step at a time approach. That's new for me. I'm usually planning far into the future, whether it's realistic or not. One recent cold, gray day, I opened the Libby app and decided to do something different. Instead of reaching for another self help book, the "you're a hot mess and here's how to fix yourself" genre, I wanted something light, something funny, something short, something immediately available. That's how I found How Y'all Doing by Leslie Jordan. I've always loved him. His humor filled me with genuine joy. Near the end of the book, he tells a story about his recovery. His sponsor asked him to call every day at the same time and list his fears. That was it. Just name them. There were 80. Leslie passed away a few years ago, and when I finished the book, I felt unexpectedly sad, knowing there would be no more. But what stayed with me was this. Even someone who radiated that much joy had lived with tremendous fear and survived it. That story made me start thinking about my own fears and the overwhelming role I've let them play in my life. So I started writing them down. and one stood out immediately. My biggest fear is rejection. I don't think anyone can honestly say they aren't afraid of rejection. We're wired for belonging. Being accepted by others is foundational. So, why did this fear feel so consuming for me? When I followed it back, it led me to something I've carried since childhood. One of the most enduring masks I've worn my entire life is the mask of not being stupid. As a child, I played games with my older sibling. There was no effort to help me understand or improve, just constant competition and constant commentary. I trusted that my own brother would love me for who I was. Instead, I was told repeatedly that I was stupid. I didn't know my brain worked differently. I didn't know why I struggled. So I absorbed it over and over again until the only option left was protection. If I could just make everyone else believe I wasn't stupid, maybe I'd be okay. That's where my fear of rejection began. Those memories are hard to revisit, not because they're dramatic, but because they're old, because they shaped everything that came after. I learned to hide the stupid. I learned to mask early. I learned to perform competence so convincingly that I even believed it myself. Fear kept me safe, but it also kept me small. Personal growth doesn't happen on your timeline, and it never follows the path you expect. But by slowly moving through the truth, grief, and clarity of this, I'm noticing something subtle. The sharp edges of fear are beginning to dull. They're still there, but they're not commanding me to cower. They're not forcing me to stay in places I no longer want to be. By allowing myself to see reality, not the version fear insists on, I'm loosening the masks I've worn for decades. And for the first time, I'm able to wonder, what am I actually capable of? Living with intention and eventually discernment is something I'm finally beginning to imagine. But first, there's fear, and naming it feels like the beginning of not letting it decide for me anymore. If you're listening and recognizing yourself in any of this, I want to invite you to notice where your fears come from, what they've asked you to hide, what they once protected you from. Fear doesn't appear out of nowhere. It forms around moments where being yourself didn't feel safe. And maybe by naming it, rather than obeying it, you can begin to loosen the masks you've worn too. I'm still in this process myself. Until we meet again, give yourself grace. You've been listening to Demoralized with Molly Kellogg-Schmauch.